Hi, this is Dr. Maureen O'Hara. I'm going to be going over some writing basics. And I'm going to be talking about how to set up your paper in APA style and some organizational items. But first I want you to think about whenever you write a paper, think about these things. What's the purpose? Who's the audience? What's the context? What's the tone? So is the purpose of your paper to persuade somebody to your point of view? Are you trying to educate and inform somebody? Are you trying to change someone's opinion? Are you trying to communicate? And who is your audience? Is it peers? Is it your instructor? Most likely for the papers you write, it's going to be your instructor. And then always think about your audience when you're writing your papers, because this is what's going to dictate what kind of language you can use, what the reading level is going to be of your audience dictates the sophistication of your language. So what's the context of your paper? Why is it being written? Is it an assignment? Do you have space limitations? Can only be so many pages, or it has to be 25 pages? And then what's the culture? Do you have a professional group that you're writing to? What is the education level that you think your audience will have? This will dictate whether you can use discipline-specific language and medical terms, for example. And then know your audience so that you can interject humor, possibly. Can you use the first person? Usually with scientific and scholarly writing, we use a formal tone. The sentences are short and concise as opposed to being flowery like they are in English composition. So every paper has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is the introduction and may have other information contained in it. Usually it's whatever the issue is that you're going to be writing about, and then defining how narrow the topic is going to be. The middle is usually the evidence from the literature that supports your thesis statement in the introduction. There may be other items in the middle as well. And then the end is a conclusion of some sort. So we use level 1 headings as a framework for the paper, and traditional level 1 headings are introduction, review of literature, methods, results, and conclusions. And then each of these will have subheadings underneath that help organize your paper. So in the introduction, the tasks that need to be completed are defining the issue. So problem is the conventional term that we use for the issue. So you're going to define the issue that's going to be talked about in the paper. And then what is the purpose of the paper? What is the argument that you're trying to make? What is the information you're trying to convey? Is there a question that you're going to be answering from the literature? So it defines the scope of the paper. And then there may be other items included in the introduction that would be for dissertations or other formal papers that might have a research question, definitions of terms, significance to the audience, those kinds of things. Then in the middle we have the evidence, and this is the review of the literature to support the argument. And it may have a variety of names. It could be called review of literature, it can be analysis, can be discussion, it might be the name of the topic being discussed. And then there are subheadings under these headings to organize your paper. So the number of headings and subheadings depends on the length of the paper. You can, when you start your paper, you can put in headings and subheadings to organize your paper like an outline. The advantage of this is then you have a mental picture of all that's going to be covered in the paper to make sure you don't forget something, and it's helpful to organize your thoughts. Remember, in the review of literature, you can't have your own thoughts. You're just reporting what was found in the literature. So be sure to refresh your skills on paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is using your own words to express an idea from the literature. We can use quotations, but in scientific writing and scholarly writing, quotations do not really add anything to your paper. Most instructors want to know what you think, not what the author thinks. But when you do paraphrasing, it still requires citations. And you need citations for these kind of things: statistics, statements of facts, lists of things, dates. As a reader, when I'm going through a paper, sometimes I'll say to myself, how do you know that? Or who says that? So if you're reading through your paper and you come across these questions next to a statement, then you need to add a citation. Now, citations are a good thing. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're talking about. It shows that you've done your reading. It shows that you know who the prominent researchers are in the field. And it gives you credibility because other smart people agree with you. If I were writing a paper about the sky being blue, then I'm going to find articles that explain why the sky is blue, and I'm going to cite those, even though the sky is blue is common knowledge. So this is my silly example for why citations are important. So here's an example of a review of literature that I might do about distance education. So distance education is going to be my level 1 heading, and then I've got these level 2 headings for history of distance education, advantages, disadvantages, challenges in distance education. Then notice how I don't have any text between my level 1 heading and my level 2 heading, but here's my paragraph here about the history. And then I'm going to launch right into my advantages. There's no text between advantages and my level 3 heading, which is going to be the advantages for the students. Level 3 headings are indented, only the first word's capitalized, there's a period at the end, spaced twice, and then you start your paragraph. Again, and then I'm going to go into my disadvantages here, and no text between the level 2 and the level 3 heading. Each one of these is going to be a paragraph. Then I've come to my last item in the list here, and this is just going to be a paragraph. And I just want to emphasize that headings are just headings. They're not sentences, and they're not part of the paragraph per se. So here's a level 2 heading, and then the next sentence is educational method that uses enhanced features such as links to online resources, multimedia, animation, movies, pictures, and sounds, and self-assessment tools. So this is not a complete sentence by itself. I have to repeat the subject here, which is online tutorials are an educational method that uses enhanced features. So here's another example. I've got this level 2 heading, and then I've got this level 3 heading. So I have types of aphasia. Broca's aphasia is one type. So then is a condition in which the person may experience either partial or total loss of the ability to expressively use language or the ability to write. So again, this is not a complete sentence. Instead, I'm going to have my level 3 heading, and now I'm going to start my paragraph. Okay, we cannot have a heading by itself at the bottom of the page. You have permission to move it to the top of the next page so that the heading is with the paragraph that it belongs to, even though it's going to leave you a space that's bigger than 1 inch. So the 1 inch mark is like right about here. So that's going to leave you a bigger space, and that's okay. Okay, other things that may be in the middle of your paper, you've got the review of literature. You may have, in a more formal paper, you may have methods. And if you've done a developmental paper, you may be describing how the literature search was done. So you're going to describe which libraries were used, which databases, how old is the literature, what search terms were used. peer-reviewed articles, those kinds of things. In a capstone project or a dissertation study, the methods section is where you talk about the recruitments of the subjects, how the data collection is going to be done, and the data analysis. There may be a results section. This is where you display and discuss the data that was collected, or if you have a descriptive project, a developmental project, you may have been developing a program or an educational product, and this is where you would describe the program or the product. The conclusion is the wrap-up at the end. It may be called conclusion, sometimes it's called summary, sometimes a discussion and a conclusion are together. But in this section, you're tying your ideas together. This is where you're synthesizing the information, you're demonstrating your critical thinking, that you understand the concepts. Gives a brief recap of the important points of the paper. And you can have your own thoughts in the introduction and the conclusion, but use the third person. And in the conclusion section, if you refer to anything from the literature, you need to have a citation again. All right, when you set up papers in APA style, these are the rules that go with that. This is on page 228 and 229 in the APA book. So it's going to be Times New Roman 12-point font. It's going to be double-spaced throughout. There's 1-inch margins on all sides of the paper. The indent is 1/2 inch. You need to go to the paragraph section and set the spacing. You might need to clear tabs. The margins are left flush. We want to have, this is left flush. We want to have a ragged margin on the right. And the page numbers are in the upper right-hand corner. So one of the first things that you can do is go into the font section and make sure it's Times New Roman, regular 12-point font, and then you can set that as the default. That way it'll make it the same font in the running head as well as in the body of the paper. Then you want to go to the paragraph section. Either you can access that from the toolbar or you can right-click on your mouse. And you want all these settings to be 0. Use none for space when you need to center level 1 headings and titles and level 2 headings. Use the first line indent for indenting paragraphs, and use the hanging indent for the reference list. The entire paper is double spaced, and then you can set this for the default. Be sure to set the margins. You can go into the margin section here and either pick normal, or you can go to the custom margins and make sure that it's 1 inch on each side. The default is this left and right being 1.25, so you're going to need to change that. The page numbers, go to Insert, Page Number, top of the page, right-hand side. Then you can add the running text at the same time. Make sure you click off different first page here because you're going to have running head on the first page but not on the second page. The running head can only be 50 characters, which ends up to be about 5.5 inches here. We want the page number to line up under the 1-inch mark here. This is the 1-inch margin on the side. Where the white and gray come together is the 1-inch margin. Here it is on the right-hand side, so we want the R and running head to line up here. Make sure that the this is set to 1/2 inch. We want this to be in the middle of the header. From here to here is 1 inch. We want this to be in the middle. So this is page 2. We don't have running head on page 2. That's why you had to click off different first page. And we want the page number to line up here at the 1-inch margin. Then you go back to Insert, edit the header, and then you can close the header. And then be sure to pick the left flush position for the margin. The computer sometimes will default here to the right justify, but we don't want that. Some of your programs may have this word proofing option. I have Word 2016. It doesn't seem to be in that, but when I had Word 2010, it was there. Click on the options section, go to proofing, then you can click off some of these things here, but go to writing style, grammar and style, and then you can check off a comma required before the last list items. This is for elements in a series, always. Punctuation required with quotation marks on the inside. Spaces required between sentences too. This way it'll underline it when you're writing, and then you can go back and fix it. Okay, I have some papers that I wanted to share with you. One of them is a 5-chapter paper that was written by one of my students at another university, and the assignment was to update a clinical topic. So the topic here was the role of intimacy on quality of life in spinal cord injured patients. And if you have an abstract, it's always page 2. The word abstract is not bold because it's considered a title and not a heading. Bold is only used for headings in the body of the paper. It is one paragraph. It's not indented. No citations. No information that's not in the body of the paper is not used in the abstract. So let's see if I can say that in a positive way. The abstract will have the same information as what's in the body of the paper. No new information is presented in the abstract. And then you're going to have these keywords. It's indented. Keywords is in italics, but the words themselves are not. They are separated by commas. There's no and here, no period here. It's just a list. So on page 41 is a nice example. And these are the words that someone else would use to find your paper if it were published in the library. This particular paper has a table of contents. So this was done using APA formatting, but APA does not have any opinion about tables of contents because they don't use them in the manuscripts. So the whole table of contents is double spaced. I've got chapter here that lines up under the 1-inch mark. I've got the E in page lines up here. See, all these page numbers line up together. This is a level 1 heading. This is a level 2 heading. It's indented 1/2 inch. This particular paper has level 3 headings, but convention is mostly to list level 1 and level 2 headings. This is continued onto the next page. Now here's the body of the paper. So remember with the abstract, if you did any abbreviations in there, it's not considered the body of the paper. So if you have any new abbreviations, you need to be sure to explain them the first time in the body of the paper. So this is chapter 1. This is the chapter identifier. This is the level 1 heading. Here's my level 2 heading describing the issue. Purpose of the paper. This is what the scope of the paper is going to be about. This one has a research question. So this has 2 sentences in this section. The first one is a lead-in sentence, and the second one is the actual question. And that's all that needs to be in this section. This paper has definition of terms. Here, this is a level 2 heading. Now I've got paragraphs in a series. So remember that we'll use Arabic numerals. It's indented 1/2 inch like a paragraph. Then spaced twice. Here's the first term. The first word's capitalized. There's a period here. This is not a complete sentence, but it's fashioned like a sentence. Then I've got the explanation with the citation here at the end. We use the hang and indent with 1/4 inch so that all the sentences line up under each other. Here's chapter 2. This is the chapter identifier. This is the name of the chapter. Then I could have had spinal cord injury here as another level 1 heading. Then I've got the level 2 heading here with the background. This is a clinical topic, so we've got some clinical items included here: epidemiology, pathophysiology, complications. Here's a level 3 heading. Level 3 heading here. Notice only the first word's capitalized. There's a period, space twice, start the paragraph. Back to the level 2. So this level 2 has these subheadings, so I could break it down a little bit more. This particular section has a level 4 heading, so here's the level 3 heading. It's bold, it's indented, the first word's capitalized, there's a period at the end. This is the same thing, only it's in italics here. And then I just want to remind you that you have to explain the abbreviation in the text. This spinal cord injury abbreviation has already been explained, so we can use it in the headings after that. Okay, this has Chapter 3 is the identifier. Methods and procedures is the level 1 heading. Here's the level 2 heading for methodology. Here's the level 2 heading for procedures. And I've got my level 3 headings here. Notice how I've got the level 3 heading for search procedures, and now I've got level 4 headings. I don't have any text here. This is, I don't need to say anything. I'm just breaking it down further here under the procedures. Chapter 4 in this paper is expected results. And for the assignment in this one, we identified the audience and which journals might be appropriate for the article. Chapter 5 in this one, this is the identifier, this is the name of the chapter, and it's going to be broken down into these level 2 subheadings here. This is probably more than you're going to do in your papers, but this one was broken down here. And then there's the reference list. References is not bold because it's considered a title and not a heading. This is all the settings are 0, hanging indent, double space. Okay, then I have another paper where this 5-chapter paper was then turned into a potential manuscript for publication. So I want you to see how this is not a 5-chapter paper, but it is probably formatted more like papers that you're going to write. So we have the running head title page here. This one has an abstract on page 2. So it's the same one that was in the 5-chapter paper. Put the title of the paper as the first line on the body of the paper. Then I just have introduction. Notice in this introduction there's no subheadings for statement of the problem and purpose of the paper and the research question. It's all combined here into this one paragraph. Then I have a review of literature. This has been edited a little bit because for a paper to be submitted for publication there's a word limitation. So he was trying to keep it down to less than 4,000 words. But it's a lot of the same subheadings with level 2 and level 3 and level 4 headings here. And then here's the conclusion. Again, it's all broken down here with these level 2 headings. And then there's going to be the reference list. I have another paper I want to share with you. This is an assignment that was one of the OT students had in her class, and she was willing to share this. So she went through and picked out what the instructor is looking for in the paper, and she highlighted these items here in the instructions. And then she made some potential headings that were going to be in the paper. And then here's the paper that she wrote. Let me see if I can put these side by side so you can see. See if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. All right, so we've got the running head. This is the title page. I left the corrections in for you to see, and I posted this as well. So here's the title. It's the first line on the page. Here's the level 1 heading, same as this one. Here's the level 2 heading. I'm sorry, this is a level 1 heading. These are all level 1 headings, as a matter of fact. It's not broken down any further, because each one of these is a paragraph. So this is the same as her potential heading over here. Here's the other one that she had. These are not necessarily in the same order as she identified them here. And then instead of a summary or conclusion, she's got reflection here. And then the reference list. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, of course, I'm having technical difficulties here. Okay, lo siento. Let me go back there. There we go. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you about how to set up your papers, how to use the headings to help you define the text that you're going to have under each section, and how to set up your paper in APA style. So if you have any questions, please be sure to contact me. Email or phone. I'm in Los Angeles. I have office hours from 3 p.m. to midnight just about every day of the week. If I'm home, I will talk to you. Thank you for your time and attention.